it's really important to understand like why someone believes what they believe, or like why someone is saying what they're saying. And I think going back to kind of like the short form is someone can say something and then you can just, without context, you can kind of just make an assumption, or like just an assumption about them or their argument, and it kind of just throws the discussion off into not really constructive.
You okay if we record?
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
no, totally.
What's your name?
Nick,
Nick? N-I-C-K?
Nick.
Cool. Good to meet you, Nick.
Yeah, good to meet you.
I'm David.
Nice to meet you.
So I'm interviewing folks about something that's meaningful to you, something that you think is true, and I'm asking questions that help us explore the quality of the reasoning that you're using to support your confidence in it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. We can do that a couple of different ways. We can do it where you tell me what the claim is or the belief, or we can do it without you telling me what it is.
Okay.
If we do it where I don't know what it is, that sometimes helps keep me more neutral about it, and it keeps me from injecting my own like agenda or bias in it.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But it's completely up to you, however you want to do it.
I think mine is pretty neutral already, so I think if I tell you, it's not going to make too much of a difference on whether or not.
It's neutral.
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to talk about is communication.
Okay.
And just the importance of communication in general, which is, one of the reasons why I sat down here today is just to talk to somebody.
Okay. You want to communicate. Okay.
And I think just in general, right now, communication is kind of iffy. Really, the main thing for me, I think personally, is the kind of influence of social media on communication, and how, in a sort of ironic sense, we have more access to communication than we ever have, but it's also diminishing the quality of that communication, and also the importance of that communication in daily life, and also just the quality of that communication in general.
Okay. Sounds like you see a problem in society.
Sort of. Yeah.
Like, there's a lack of communication?
I think so.
Okay. Regardless or despite the access we have to ways to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, precisely.
Is it okay if I ask about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What do you think the best solution is to this problem?
Honestly, that's probably the most complex part of like how to deal with this situation. I think it just mostly comes down to the actual people themselves getting out and just communicating more effectively and efficiently. Like, for example, what we're doing right now is like sitting down, having a conversation with a random person just on the street about anything. That's definitely like a good starting point. I think in general for social media right now, having more like constructive discourse would also be a good way to kind of get down that path. because a lot of the stuff on the internet right now is negative, which is kind of a bummer. But you know, that's just kind of the consequences of having a free platform with like anonymity and stuff like that. Is just you can kind of say whatever you want, no matter how negative it is. But
Okay.
I think for sure, talking more face to face, like in person, is a good way to start kind of correcting some of that.
Okay. So, one, if not the solution to the problem of the lack of communication that we have as a society, is to have more face to face, in person conversations.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that you can do to start working on it.
Okay. How do we do that?
I think um, you can do it in a couple different ways. You can do it, honestly, Zoom works too, like some sort of teleconference type of thing. Just being face to face, not in a physical sense, just talking to someone, using your words and looking at them. Uh, I think it just helps make a more meaningful conversation when you can look at someone and actually kind of converse back and forth instead of like on the internet where you have, you type a reply and then you have to wait and you don't really know that person, like you don't know what they look like or like their expressions when they're saying something,
Mm-hmm.
which is another thing that I think is kind of iffy with social media is like tone. It's very
Mm-hmm.
hard to indicate tone on social media. But for sure, you can do things like Zoom or any type of web call if you can't do physically in person. But then also physically in person works too, like what we're doing, like big conferences, stuff like that. Where people have like panels and stuff like that, and then you can take questions. Just any type of physical gathering. It doesn't even have to be like professional. It can just
Mm-hmm.
be like, you know, what you're doing here. Just come out and put a sign up and be like, hey, let's talk about something.
Mm-hmm. Is there like a human voice aspect to this? Because you haven't mentioned that, but you mentioned typing, and typing is like you lose tone.
Yeah,
So, what is there like a voice aspect to
I
this,
think
or?
there is a voice aspect to it because I think there's also a level of respect and understanding that comes with having a face-to-face conversation that you don't really get when conversing on the internet because it's very easy to, if you're not like standing right next to someone or sitting right next to them and talking to them, it's very easy to get overly emotional or kind of just disrespectful sometimes. It depends on the conversation you're having, but
Mhm.
it's very easy to lose the kind of nuance of the conversation and just kind of divulge into just kind of name calling and stuff like that because you're not right next to the person, you're not seeing them, and you're also not getting their kind of emotional rebound. So you're not seeing how they're reacting to the stuff you're saying. You're just seeing what they're typing.
There's like an emotional intelligence aspect to
Yeah,
this,
yeah, for sure.
and like the ability to respond
Yeah,
that way. Okay. So in-person conversations is the best solution.
I think maybe not the best, but I think one of the better options for sure.
What do you think the best is?
I think the best is just talking in just in general, flat out, in a more long form sense, because I think social media right now is very, very kind of short term content oriented. Like you see this like especially with like TikTok and stuff like that, where it's very short form content, and I think that's kind of slipped its way into conversations too, where it's like I say one thing, they say another thing, and then the conversation just stops. And I think something that would be a good start and probably a little more important is focusing on having more like in-depth discussions and actually hashing out issues and stuff like that.
Okay. So it's like a time aspect to this.
Yeah,
Okay. So setting aside more time for the conversation is the best solution.
I think kind of not reducing discussions to sort of like one dimensional arguments and just kind of like saying like one statement and then they say the other statement. I think it's if you just have a more in-depth conversation, then it would definitely help with some of the communication issues.
Okay. Why is long having long form conversations. Why is that the best solution?
So I think that having long form conversations or just like discussions, any type of in depth exploration of an idea, it always helps get rid of like misconceptions or maybe just negative ideas you have about something in general. Because, like, if I were to sit down with you and we were to disagree about something, I think the healthiest way to have a conversation about that is just to sit down and be like, okay, this is what I believe, this is why I believe it, this is like just explaining my thought process, and then you can sit down and you can explain to me like why you believe this, kind of. I think context is really important when it comes to conversations, just in general about anything. It's really important to understand like why someone believes what they believe, or like why someone is saying what they're saying, and I think going back to kind of like the short form is someone can say something and then you can just, without context, you can kind of just make an assumption, or like just an assumption about them or their argument, and it kind of just throws the discussion off into not really constructive.
Okay. So the reason why having long form conversations is the best reason is because it allows for context and depth
Yeah.
to be present.
Yes.
Okay. And therefore um, having a more accurate idea of what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
Okay. How does this idea affect your behavior?
So, kind of like what I'm doing right now is I kind of try to avoid involving myself in like very brief, in-depth conversations, if that makes sense, where if there's a complex topic or something, I don't really like to kind of just like exchange one or two comments with people on the internet, because usually in my experience it doesn't really amount to anything. It just kind of devolves into, well, I'm right and you're right, so we're both just right and mad at each other. um, so
Okay. So you want the depth of, you think it's important for the depth of the topic to match the amount of time you have in discussing it?
yeah, I think it's very important for, like, if you're gonna discuss a complex topic just in general, that the complexity of the topic, you should input the same amount of time into discussing it, because usually that's the best way to not necessarily come to a conclusion, like a decisive conclusion, but I think it's just the best way to discuss it in general and kind of gauge why or how someone is come to that conclusion to themselves. And also at the same time, like, if you have a complex topic, then if you don't discuss it in its fullest, then you're not really exploring the topic in itself. So basically, if you're not going into the depth of the discussion, then it's kind of meaningless and it doesn't really go anywhere.
Okay. Let's say we implemented your solution, um, and things remain the same, or maybe it got worse as far as human connection and communication. What would that mean?
Um, that I was wrong, simply. But also at the same time, I think if things did work or did not work or stay the same, it could mean just anything else in is wrong or just needs fixing, or maybe even we're just looking in the wrong place.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Do you have any questions for me or anything?
No.
Okay.
I appreciate you sitting out here and talking to people, though. It's pretty cool.
I really appreciate you stopping and chatting with me too.
Yeah, I hope it was useful
Yeah.
and definitely constructive.
Yeah. It's so there's like a bunch of different experiments I like to do, and one of the newest one that I've been working on is this kind of like instead of instead of exploring a belief, exploring solutions to a problem.
Hmm.
And instead of exploring like why your reasons are good reasons to support a belief. Explore why you think your solutions are good solutions to the problem. So it's kind of like a parallel to classic street epistemology,
Yeah.
and using kind of the same ideas and the same approach to explore, like, how do we solve stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's easy to talk about a problem. It's harder to talk about the solutions to that problem and like how to figure it out.
Yeah. And like how can we be sure that the solutions that we have are useful or will work?
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you helping me with that.
Of course.
It's really coming down. Do you have something in mind?
Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. I don't know how much more light you have, but
I'm gonna start packing up.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you got at least 8 people today so far.
I think you're the 7th.
Am I the 7th?
Yeah, I think so. I'll have to double check, but I
All
think
right. Well,
that's-
hey, I appreciate it. Thank
yeah,
you.
you as well.
For having me, and good luck if you do this again in the future.
Thanks. Good luck with your studies. What were you studying again? Communication, right?
Operations management.
Business
Business, yeah.
management. Gotcha. Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you.